And thanks everybody for being on a call about the Partner of the Year Awards. I am Clive Davies, and I run the Safer Choice program. And here with me today are Chen Wen and Linda Rutch, Chen's going to do most of the presentation. Chen, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
Hi, it's Linda.
So what we're going to do today, starting on slide number 2, which is our table of contents, is that we are going to talk about what it means to be a winner, what we see as the benefits. We're going to talk a little bit about the who, like Emily said, can apply the categories and what we're looking for in each category, what the application looks like, and then the awards themselves and what those are all about. We want to talk about timing, and we want to talk about the process that we would like to see folks go through. So starting with slide number 3, we believe that the Partner of the Year Awards offers benefits for our stakeholders. That's really why we're doing it, the benefits for stakeholders and, frankly, the benefits for us as well in getting the word out on the logo and improving consumer and purchaser recognition of the Safer Choice label. So it's recognition by EPA. There's an award ceremony in Washington, D.C. for the winners. This is attended by high-level agency folks. The administrator has come to the first 2 sets of awards. And this is an opportunity to have EPA specifically talk about your company. And that's a special distinction. There are EPA ethics regulations that generally prevent us from talking about accomplishments of specific companies unless we can demonstrate through a rather elaborate process that companies have met a certain set of criteria. And once that happens, there is a special ability for us to work with companies and other organizations, NGOs, to really get the word out, trumpet their accomplishments. So it's really a special opportunity. It's a special opportunity for a business or other organization to be associated with the agency. And that, I probably don't need to say to you, is something that can have PR benefits for companies who deserve it and who have done special things. And EPA engages in social media, trade press coverage, and then other things can come of this as well. And I think this is really only limited by a company or an organization's creativity. So there are a lot of things that you can do. The other things, sort of details, I guess, is that a company would be mentioned on the Safer Choice webpage. So that's an EPA website where your company would have its accomplishments specifically covered. Also, at the CSPA spring meeting and at the ISSA Interclean meeting, we generally highlight the winners as well. So you get benefits in front of your peers if you're a product manufacturing company. So I think those are all some pretty fantastic things. And I think it really is important to know that this is about the creative things that a company or an organization can do with this recognition to do good things for the company or for the organization. So what's really important, and I think the biggest takeaway here, the thing that Chen and I want you to remember, is that we have put together an application and a judging process. This is slide 4. An application and a judging process, and here it is. And that application has specific questions on it, and we want to see responses to those questions. We have a set of agency personnel who volunteer to be judges, and they do I think, a fair and reasonable job of processing these applications, but they don't have background on your company. Their knowledge of our program may not be extremely deep, and if you don't say what you've done, provide adequate context, and specifically answer the questions, then we have to disqualify your application. And we had folks last year who we knew did good things and who didn't answer the questions. They gave us a sort of a loose interpretation of what we wanted. Don't do that. That's a waste of your time. Please make sure that you answer the questions so that we can judge your application. So with that, I want to turn it over to Chen, and thanks everybody for being on.
Hey, thanks everybody. Let's move on to slide number 5. I'm going to walk you guys through the mechanics, basically, of the application process so that you have a better idea of what it is that we're looking for. Starting out with who is actually eligible to apply for the award. So this program is really designed to give recognition to our partners and stakeholders who work with us in a number of different ways. It's easy to talk about the partners because you have a partnership agreement with us, and that makes it real easy. But there are lots of other folks who are involved with the Safer Choice program, like a lot of the NGOs, other organizations, and maybe chemical companies that design cool stuff that don't have a formal agreement with us necessarily. You are also eligible to apply, and I'll go into some of the details in the different categories that's coming up next, and so that we can kind of delve a little bit deeper into that. And then towards the end, we'll have some time for questions and answers. So if you have any specific questions about your particular organization, we're happy to talk about that, or you can also talk to me offline after the webinar is over. So why don't we get started with the different categories. If you go to slide number 6, you'll see the 5 different categories that's actually listed in the application forms. We've divided up our little Safer Choice world into 5 different categories, and I'll go through each one of those in turn so that you have a better idea. On slide number 7, we talk a little bit about the formulators and the product manufacturers, and these are the folks who actually make stuff. So a product that could carry the Safer Choice label. So you could be a name manufacturer, partnership program with us. And for those applicants, what we are looking for in the application is we would like you to tell us a little bit about the new products that you've labeled in the past year. So, and I just wanted to quickly highlight that we are looking for activities that you've done in 2016 specifically. So tell us if you've labeled new products in this past year, the percentage of total products that's in your product line that are carrying the label, and what the changes are, and we hope that's an increase in the percentage, and the prominence of the use of the labels on your products. So in those cases, we would love to see maybe a graphic of what your label looks like and how does our logo show up on your product labels. All right, moving on to the next category on slide number 8. This is a category for the purchasers and distributors. So many of you who are in those categories may not actually have a partnership agreement with us specifically, since you may be out there selling the Safer Choice products, but we don't actually have a partnership agreement in place. What we would like to see from you is some information about the number of Safer Choice label product that you are carrying and selling, and how you are actually raising awareness about the Safer Choice program when you're working with your clients. Any specifics in terms of numbers, like percentages, would be really useful. Examples of how you're raising awareness with your clients would be really useful. Next, we'll go to the next category of retailers. And these are folks who actually have either a physical store, or maybe if Amazon is online, you know, a virtual store that sells stuff. So in those cases, we are wondering how many Safer Choice label products are you actually carrying? And in many cases, we know that companies or retail companies also have their own private label products that may carry the Safer Choice label. So between your private label and your and your other consumer labels, like how many products may you be carrying. If you are raising awareness about these products and how are you doing that, some of the examples we're seeing are maybe web ads, hang tags on the shelves, and all those type of activities that you might do. Also, we wonder if you actually use Safer Choice label products in the maintenance of your own facilities. This would be especially true if you are a physical store. So what do you clean your stores with? Are you walking your talk, essentially? We would be curious about all of those things. Going on to slide number 10, this is perhaps the most broad category of awards, and these are for supporters. And this is for all the organizations that don't either make a product or sell a product, but are advocating or educating about Safer Choice. So you could be a non-government organization, you might be a municipal government or state government, or any other organizations. And you may not have a formal agreement with us, and what we are looking for is your ability to demonstrate how you are promoting Safer Choice. So any kind of information about if you're doing education programs, if you're doing other kinds of activities, giving webinars, training people about Safer Choice and stuff like that, those are the type of information that we're looking for. Finally, the last but not the least category are the innovators. This we divide into two large categories. One is for those companies that actually, I'll just say, invent new molecules. So in the true sense of an innovator, you're creating greener, safer molecules that could go on to the skill or clean ingredients list that we maintain. Alternatively, since we've gotten these applications in the past, we also would like to recognize companies that may use Safer Choice in an innovative way. To give you an example, Levi Strauss used a skill list in their production process as a way to identify greener products when they're making their jeans. So it may not be something that we think of as something that could apply directly with Safer Choice, but when you think about it, it's actually pretty innovative. And I'll just make a quick plug because I just saw a rash of news articles. Most recently in the Chicago Tribune, they just printed an article about that. Let's go to slide number 12 now. Speaking of prior winners, we do actually maintain a short profile of each of the award winners in the past couple years. And on the slide, you'll see the shorty link to those web pages. So if you want to check out what the prior award winners did and why they won the award, I would encourage you to go there and take a look at their profiles. And on the right-hand side of the slide, you can just see like a picture of what the web page or that web page looks like. And each of those award winners have like a one-page profile. That just gives you an idea of what it is that they did and perhaps give you an idea of the type of information that would be useful for us when we're looking at your application. Now, to talk about the application process itself, if you haven't already done so, I would encourage you to visit our Partner of the Year page. Oh, sorry, go to slide number 13, please. Thank you. Take a look at the application award application itself. You'll see that on one of the pages, we actually lay out the scoring sheet for the individual categories. On the left-hand side of the application page, you'll see that each category of awards have a very specific scoring process. So you need to answer the corresponding questions on the application, and we weigh those scores accordingly. And if you have any confusion about that, please shoot us a question and we can try to answer it at the end. I would encourage you to think strongly about which category you might belong to when you apply. We strongly discourage you from applying to all 5 categories. I can think of almost nobody who would fall into all 5 categories. But there might be some companies that might fall into a couple of different categories. For example, if you are a manufacturer who happen to also discover a very cool new chemical, that could put you into the manufacturer and the innovator award categories. That's one example of more than one category. But we need to make sure, or you need to make sure that when you're writing your application, you address the questions that we are asking about. So in your manufacturer application, tell us how many products you're making. In your innovative one, you would tell us more about what molecules you just invented, for example. Let's go to slide number 14 now. Just briefly talk about the application materials that we're looking for from you. The application itself is available online, and we have made the applications easier, fillable electronically to make life a little bit easier for you. That's only a few pages long. In addition, we're looking for supporting materials of no more than 15 pages. So this is anything like statistics that you may have that you want to share, graphics of your labels if you're following in that category, those type of things. We would also appreciate it if you can submit your applications electronically. So if you can PDF the whole thing and send it to us, that makes it easier for us to share with our various judges that are across the country. Speaking of judges, I want to just tell you a little bit about our judging process on slide number 15. We recruit judges from across the EPA. And the important takeaway on that is you should not assume that the judges who are looking at your application is familiar with the Safer Choice program and or your company in particular. I would even say that you should assume that they know nothing and that you need to paint a very complete picture of your company as well as your involvement with the program. That would actually make it much more useful for the judges, because then they can have a better idea of why it is that you're applying. One thing that we started doing is we also make prior year's applications available to the judges to reference. So if you have applied in the past, they do have the ability to go back to the past 2 years and see what you did before compared to what you might be applying to this year. Finally, I just want to say a couple of quick words about the overall process. Because this is considered a very high visibility award within the EPA, we are required to do an enforcement screening of the potential winners before we can award the Safer Choice Partner of the Year award onto your company or organization. What that means is there is a standard process within EPA to basically check on your enforcement record for both civil and criminal activities. We do have some flexibility in terms of how major an enforcement issue might be if it happens to be attached to your organization. However, if it's considered a major issue, we will likely not be able to award a Partner of the Year award onto your organization. So my suggestion is, before you get started, maybe have a quick talk with your lawyer just to see if you have any dings on your record. And if you find out that you do, maybe just give us a quick call and we could try to troubleshoot it just a little bit. But we actually elevate any of the enforcement checks onto our senior managers so that they actually make the final call. But we could try to guide you a little bit if you find out something ahead of time. let's go to the next slide. Just a quick reminder on the key dates. We just did the webinar. Hopefully that was useful for you guys. We will be making a recording of this webinar available as soon as we are able, hopefully within about a week to week and a half. So if you want to replay it, you should be able to. The application deadline is going to be December the 16th, and you can send that in electronically. I believe the contact information is on our webpage, so it should be pretty easy to know where to send it. We hope to have our awards judging done by about March of 2017, so we hope to give you a heads up as to our preliminary decision by that point. And I would mark on your calendar that we plan to have the Partner of the Year Awards in 2017 on May the 15th, which is a Monday. It'll be somewhere in D.C., but we do not know exactly where just yet. All right, with that, let's go to questions. Emily, would you mind reading out any questions that we may have received so far?
Sure. We have 3 questions so far. And as a reminder, we are going to moderate this question and answer session through the Q&A function on WebEx. When submitting your question, please remember to direct it to all panelists via the drop-down menu. And also, as a reminder, before you type your question or comment into the Q&A pane, if you would, please also type your affiliation due to the number of people on today's call. So with that, our first question is from Rebecca Stevens, GSA. And Rebecca asks, are federal agencies allowed to apply as a supporter?
That's an easy one. The answer is yes, absolutely. In last year, GSA SAM Group applied as a federal team, and we were happy to award them a Partner of the Year award. So a number of the federal family are doing great work in support of the Safer Choice program, so we would welcome an application from a federal partner.
Thanks, Chen. The next question is from Stuart Webster of Gojo, and Stuart asks, can manufacturers of antimicrobial pesticides who carry the DFE certification qualify as a Safer Choice partner?
Hey, it's Clive. Thanks very much for the question. So the answer is yes. You have to read the application a little bit liberally. It's Safer Choice versus the DFE pesticides pilot program. But I would recommend, you probably think of yourself as a formulator, and I don't know if you happen to have a copy of the application in front of you, but if you do, you would notice that running up and down the left-hand side of page number 5 of the application is a description of the categories in which you can apply. The first one is formulators, then there's purchasers, then there's supporters and innovators. And for each of those, just underneath the category, it shows how the application would be scored. And on the right-hand side are the areas where you can descriptions of how you would do your write-up, and basically there are areas 1 through 5 in which you can provide us with information. And if you apply as a formulator, you'll notice that area number 5, which is really all about the innovation that you've made, is only about 10% of your score, or 10% of your score. Yep. But if you look down at supporters or innovators, area 5 is 75% of your score. So you should think about that when you're submitting, because the situation we're in with the pilot right now is that you may have come up with a kind of an interesting innovation, a product that's one of a kind in the pilot, a neat way of approaching the pilot, the innovation to get into the pilot, the way that you formulated your product so that it could fit in and meet all the criteria. Those are things that you would highlight under item number 5. And to get the maximum benefit from submitting, you would want to submit under, or you would want to submit as an innovator. So just sort of think about what the best role is for you, the best way to describe yourself, and the best way to apply. So just because you are a formulator doesn't mean that that's the one that you would apply under. Because I think in your case you would be an innovator.
All right, next.
Okay, the next question is from Dave Opperleaf from Bissell. And Dave asked, can we qualify for Partner of the Year 2 years in a row?
Yeah. I would just emphasize one thing. You need to show us what you did in 2016 that might be different than 2015. So otherwise, we might be forced to say we cannot tell the difference between 1 year and the next year, and we may not be able to award you an award. So highlight the differences between the prior year and the current year.
Okay, thanks, Chen. The next question is from Al Om from Pride Industries, and Al asks, would our bottle, which bears a patent that makes for more of an environmental impact in addition to our new Safer Choice certified multi-surface formula, make sense for the innovator category?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. So you might straddle two different categories, right? I think the bottle may fit better as an innovator application, but if you look at the company overall and the line of products, you may also fit very well into the manufacturer category. So that's a tough call. I mean, that might be one where you might want to consider doing one application per category and highlight different things. Maybe talk about the bottle in the innovator one and talk about the company overall in the manufacturer one.
Yeah. It could be a very similar application, but the applications would be scored differently depending on which one you submit under.
Right.
Okay, I don't see any more questions at the moment. Please do feel free to submit a question or a comment to us. It's 2:30, so we still have time to answer questions.
Chen was just clear, that's all.
And why don't we do this real quick while we're waiting for folks to think of more questions. If you'll go to the very last slide, if you have any questions that you think of later or you want to touch base with me for any reason, my contact is there. Feel free to shoot me a note or give me a call. I'll be around except for Turkey Day pretty much every day, so I know a lot of you like to do your homework at the last moment. So feel free to give me a call or, yeah, I'll be happy to help out how I can.
And I think the biggest takeaway, the thing we want to encourage you to do is to actually read exactly what we're asking for in the bulleted questions on pages 5 and 6 of the application form, and just make sure you respond to those. That's what we're going to be looking for, and we really don't want to disqualify excellent candidates, which is something we had to do last year, and we don't want to do that again. So thanks so much. Are there any others, Emily? Otherwise,
yeah,
we'll take
one question just came in about when will participants receive the webinar slides?
We could probably send that out to everybody right away. I mean, it's no giant secret. So, Emily, if you can help us facilitate that process, we can send it out to everybody who's registered for the webinar.
Okay, sure.
That would be great. And then as soon as we have the recording transcribed and all that stuff, we'll have the whole thing available so you can either listen to the recording, although I don't know if we were a star performance or anything like that, or read a transcript. But in about a week's time.
Thank you. No more questions at the moment.
Okay. Well, let's thank everybody and end the call then, Emily.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for your
Thanks,
participation
everybody.
today.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.